Don't touch my stuff. In college, I had a randomly assigned roommate that I did not get along with at all. Our personalities were just on two opposite ends of the personality spectrum and we clashed. The only things we had in common were that we went to the same college and lived in the same apartment. That's it. Anyways, it was a nightmare living situation. The apartment had 4 rooms and 2 bathrooms. She and I shared the same bathroom as our rooms were next to each other. We had 2 roommates on the other half of the apartment that we both got along with. After over 8 months of just pure passive aggressiveness towards each other, like, I would put sticky notes on her days old dirty dishes and she would put my wet laundry on the floor, she decided to report me to apartment management for bullying her. Honestly, we were doing it to each other. However, the apartment management took pity on her because I was tall and athletic and she was 6 inches shorter than me and very thin. She claimed I physically intimidated her and she was scared to live with me. She did this because she wanted to move to a new apartment without paying a $500 fee, but instead the apartment issued a written warning. The warning stated that we were not to touch any of each other's personal belongings without written permission. First infraction was a $250 fine. Second infraction was a $500 fine, and a third infraction would result in eviction. I was so scared walking out of the office because I could not afford those fines and she had the biggest smile on her face. I knew that she would immediately report me. I went back to the apartment and she left for work. I was mortified. Then I realized she made a huge mistake. Everything communal in the apartment belonged to me and she was a super moocher. I told my other roommates what had happened and they were shocked. I asked if I could use their bathroom temporarily and they said of course. So, I immediately emptied out everything that was mine in our shared bathroom: shower curtain, toilet paper, rug, towels, soap. I grabbed my magnetic whiteboard and listed out everything in the kitchen that belonged to me: plates, cups, mugs, pots, pans, silverware, coffee maker, toaster, pot holder, towels, literally listed every single item, and said that she is not allowed to use any of it without my written, no texts, permission. I also drew some eyes to remind her that everyone was watching. I popped that whiteboard on the fridge and went in my room to do some homework. Later, she came home from work and had a meltdown. She screamed. Not any words, just a blood-curdling scream. In the following couple of days, her father came to the apartment to threaten me that they were getting a lawyer. LOL. She bought her first roll of toilet paper and a plastic shower curtain, but it was too much for her to handle. She went back to the main office to report my bullying once again and was instead told she could either deal with it or pay $500 to move to a new apartment. She moved out 7 days after the warning was issued.
Now to the comments. A lawyer? Really? How childish of her and her father.
Her dad will hire a lawyer but not pay $500 to move her daughter? That's logical.
I'd wager he was lied to by his daughter about the goings-on when he made the threat. Seeing how she moved out a week later, I assume he was quickly informed of the truth and changed his tune, shelled out the $500 to get her moved. I lived in a similar student apartment in college. My junior year, I lived with 3 girls who were a year ahead of me in school. They were all friends and just needed a 4th person for the apartment. How bad could it be, right? Wrong. They were noisy, rude little bleep who used my food and stuff without permission, never included me in anything and were obsessive about the thermostat. They insisted on keeping the AC off during a major heat wave in early September when we lived on the top floor in some insane bid to save money on the electric bill. They also brought in a cat against the rules of our lease, and even though they promised I wouldn't be fined for it, I still was. I did my best to make it through the year mostly by staying with my boyfriend who lived in the same building or spending as much time in my room as possible. Honestly, I don't think I spent more than a few hours in our common areas the entire year outside of preparing meals. I learned my lesson after that. I lived with 3 friends the following year and after that never lived with anyone else other than the boyfriend. who became my husband.
I hated every roommate I've ever had, but living with my partner has been a ducking blast and everything is so much more affordable. Congratulations, we made it.
Of course. Living with someone else isn't easy at all. Different backgrounds, different education, different zip codes. That's why I think the key ingredient is love. That's why living with your partner or your best friend is easier, and still, discussions always arise, but it's love that helps you get over everything. That's amazing. I'm curious though, what kind of apartment building management interferes with the property/relationships inside of an apartment? Was this university residence? In Canada, the apartment managers would have nothing to do with roommate disagreements and have no clout to levy fines for such issues.
It sounds like university residence. I had a terrible roommate once too, and if they had gone to higher ups, there would have been more problems of them reaching out to help us. Instead, they just kept being shitty until they moved out because they hated me.
It scares me sometimes how there's so many crazy people in the world, like what TF happened to them as kids.
Grew up in America. But actually, around here it's super common. I was an RA, resident assistant, think employee of the dorms to help do safety checks, help with lockouts, etc. And I always had freshman residents. At our campus, only 25% of the freshmen who started college in the fall, completed their spring semester and continued into their second year. We actually have 4 dorms for freshmen, then only 2 for each subsequent year due to the drop-off. Dorms got much better for the upperclassmen, they were regular apartments. This was in Massachusetts at a state school.
Amherst, Dartmouth, or Boston. It's always the roommates that own none of the communal items in the house that start the most shit.
I had a roommate that would use all of my dishes, but not clean them because they weren't his dishes, so, my options were either clean them or have no dishes. I chose option C and just gifted them to him so he'd have to clean them.
I love the fact that you were like, you don't own any dishes, here have some. I had a falling out with my roommate after about a year of living together, and one of the ways they retaliated was by letting the communal dishes pile up in the sink for days so that if I needed to cook or eat I would have to wash stuff they dirted. One day, with the sink piled comically high, I opened the cabinet to find it completely empty and decided I had had enough. I went and bought plates, bowls, glasses, a skillet, a saucepan, a pot, a glass measuring cup, a full set of silverware and a drawer organizer for the silverware, put them neatly in my half of the cabinets and emptied a drawer for my utensils. After that, the sink never seemed to pile so high anymore and they also had trouble getting all their dishes to fit in their half of the cabinet. Felt good, man. LOL, you took the shower curtain, I loved this one. I had a roommate exactly like this. She even bought a power line adapter that plugged into the Wi-Fi router and siphoned all the bandwidth directly to her computer so she could sit in her room and happily game while nothing loaded for the rest of us. Naturally, we started just going to the router and turning the adapter off at the plug. It caused a lot of passive-aggressive door slamming, stomping, and at its peak that dang adapter was being turned on and off about 20 times a day. Eventually, she started a screaming match over it, during which she yelled, "It's simple, just don't touch my stuff." Jackpot. I replied, "No problem. You can stop touching my stuff then. That includes every single pot, pan, plate, fork, knife, spoon, tea towel, glass, mug, etc. in the kitchen. Doesn't feel quite as fair when it's you who can't use house essentials, right?" She was pretty stunned to say the least. Sadly, didn't stop her being a grade A dick for the rest of the year, but the moment itself was pretty satisfying.
If it were a decent enough router, you could have rate limited the port her Ethernet adapter was connected to.
Or you could log into the admin of the router and find and ban their MAC address from the allowed devices and the router disappears from their existence. A very satisfying win, haha. This is an applause-worthy level of petty on your part. God, I love when people act all snarky and smug just to get bit in the ass, especially by their own dang actions. Karma at its finest. I had same sort of issue. For some reason I thought sharing rent with a never left home before friend was a good idea. Wow, was I in for a shock. She moved in using garbage bags, had very little in the way of cutlery or appliances, and had zero furniture except her bed from home. Then it got interesting. I'd do laundry, figure I'd throw hers in on top to show good faith and start sharing chores. Into my washing machine, of course. So I didn't want to overstep and hang her washing, underwear, out in case her BF or her get upset over it. Boundaries, etc. And I'd get home an hour before her, so by the time I did the laundry collection and wash cycle she'd be getting home, so she could do it, saving effort and time and catching last of the summer sun. Sometime if she had just shirts I'd hang them anyway. Well, being an always lived at home chick, she thought nothing of it and got used to it quickly, so much so that one day she came home, left my one dirty bowl and one dirty spoon unwashed from breakfast but did her big pile of dishes instead, and then proceeded to complain that her laundry, from today, wasn't hung and yesterday's laundry was left on the line, but that I'd brought mine in. She hung her own underwear the day prior, so I calmly explained all that I'd been doing extra, for both of us, the whole time, and how sharing and chipping in worked better as a two-person effort, especially since I'd provided 99% of furniture and appliances and entire home theater entertainment system. Well, she hit the roof, went off her nut and walked out after a tantrum screaming I'd better not touch any of her stuff. No problem. So, the next day, I get home an hour earlier than her as usual, but immediately started to stack all my furniture, unplug all my home theater and TV and put all the appliances and white goods in little groups so they were unusable without some effort. Well, she gets home ready to watch some crappy TV show while I do chores and goes off her nut again. I calmly explain that if things go both ways and if I'm not to touch her stuff then ditto her, with mine. It dawns on her. She leaves. BF later calls to say she's moved out the next day. I say sure, but does she understand lease agreements? Because I do. She ended up on the hook for 4 months more rent. Agent said to me, just pay your half, we will chase her for her share. In the end I agreed to move out and her BF had to take over my lease. That was a close one.